Imagine being desired by an emperor and still not having the right to say no. The Roman Empire was not built solely on blood and glory, but also on silent bodies, shaped by the will of the powerful. Have you ever heard of male concubines? No, that's no coincidence. Few people know the story of these men whose existence was kept in the shadows of the most powerful empire of antiquity. Men who had no voice, no choice, and often not even a name. Hidden behind marble curtains, they were sexual slaves, living trophies and prisoners of luxury. Their lives were forgotten for centuries. But what you're about to discover might change everything you think you know about Rome. It all began early, far too early. The fate of many male concubines was sealed during adolescence or worse, in childhood. They were slaves bought in the markets of Pergamon, youths raided from Greek villages, sons of impoverished families sold for a handful of denarii. To the Roman elite, youth was a commodity, and the more beautiful, the rarer and more expensive. These boys were carefully selected. Smooth skin, delicate features, submissive eyes. It wasn't enough to be young, they had to look vulnerable, moldable, ready to take a place where another's will was absolute. Some were acquired in silent auctions. Others were diplomatic gifts, human currency in negotiations between elites. In certain cases, they were boys born inside the household itself, sons of slaves who never knew their father. No one asked if they wanted this. No one needed to ask. Still very young, they began a slow process of molding. They received refined education, learned to recite poetry, play instruments, and carry themselves with grace at elite gatherings. In public, they were calm, discreet, obedient. In private, they were everything expected of them. The body, the gestures, even the tone of voice. Everything was carefully trained not to outshine but to elevate the status of their master. In practice, they were fixed sexual partners but without the status of a spouse. There was no marriage contract, no guaranteed rights. Some held the illusion of protection. They lived in rich villas with access to books, hot baths, and expensive food. But even the best-treated concubine lived with one certainty. His worth lasted only as long as he was desired. But unfortunately, there was an unwritten expiration date for concubines. Puberty, when the voice deepened, when youthful features began to fade. Everything changed. What had once been considered attractive, purity, passivity, innocence, became a problem, a risk to the master's image. What happened to these young men once they grew up? Few records tell us clearly. Upon reaching adulthood, the concubine carried a stigma that never disappeared. Even if he gained freedom or was dismissed, he would never be seen as a full citizen. He was marked by the role he once had, the sexual object of another man. Many were cast aside, forgotten, pushed to the margins of public life. In Roman society, masculinity was something that had to be constantly proven, and a man who had once been submissive was never seen as an equal again. However, not all concubines lived in the shadows of Roman households. Some were taken to the very heart of power. The imperial palaces, the Roman Empire with all its grandeur, was also the stage for personal stories shaped by submission and control. Emperors like Nero, Caligula, and Hadrian kept concubines in their inner circles. Hand-picked young men, often Greek or Eastern slaves, prized for their beauty and docility. These boys lived surrounded by marble, gold, and decadent parties, but the splendor hid the truth. Luxury was not freedom. It was merely a more ornate cage. Proximity to the throne offered status, but also extreme risk. Imperial concubines were always at the mercy of intrigue, jealousy, and unpredictable moods. A single misunderstood comment, a gesture at the wrong moment, or simply the fading of the emperor's interest, and their fate could change brutally. Can you imagine living under that level of control? Having everything and, at the same time, owning absolutely nothing, not even yourself. That was the reality behind Rome's marble walls, where being close to power often meant living on the edge of collapse. Few cases illustrate the mix of privilege, tragedy, and objectification as clearly as that of Antinous. He was young, beautiful, and Greek. Three traits that drew the attention of many powerful Romans, especially Hadrian, the emperor. Antinous became his favorite. He accompanied him on travels across the empire, received a refined education, luxurious gifts, and an unusually prominent position for someone of such humble origin. The relationship was built on a foundation of absolute power. Hadrian decided where Antinous went, what he wore, whom he spoke to. All the prestige he held came directly from the emperor's approval. It was a comfortable life, but only for as long as it was convenient to the most powerful man in Rome. Then, in 130 CE, during a trip to Egypt, it all ended. Antinous' body was found in the Nile River. No official explanation was given, and that opened the door to theories, many of them disturbing. Some say he committed suicide, unable to endure a life of constant submission and exposure. Others believe he was sacrificed as part of a mystical ritual to prolong Hadrian's life, a practice influenced by Egyptian religions the emperor admired. And there are those who think he was simply discarded, perhaps for having lost his symbolic value in the eyes of his protector. Whatever the truth may be, the fact is that Antinous vanished from real life to become a myth. After his death, Hadrian ordered statues to be erected in his honor, spread his image across the empire, and even founded a city bearing his name. He created an entire religious cult around the figure of the dead youth. But if Antinous' story was marked by posthumous idealization, the case of Sporus revealed the opposite: the complete erasure of dignity in life. Sporus was just a teenager when he was chosen by Nero. His appearance resembled that of Poppaea, the emperor's wife who had died not long before. That resemblance for Nero was enough. Nero, already infamous for his cruelty and eccentricity, did something that even by Roman standards was considered grotesque. He had Sporus castrated, not for medical reasons, not as punishment, but to forcibly turn him into a wife. The emperor arranged a public ceremony, with Sporus dressed as a bride, veiled, led to the altar as if he were a woman. Before senators, soldiers, and the Roman elite, Nero formalized what was, in practice, a performance of power and perversity, an institutionalized humiliation. And it wasn't an isolated episode. Nero paraded Sporus at public events, called him Sabina, referencing the dead wife he apparently wanted to replace. He demanded that Sporus behave like a woman, speak like a woman, exist as a woman, against his will, stripped of identity. Can you imagine what it means to have your body mutilated, your identity erased, and your life turned into a spectacle? And still, Sporus was not treated with compassion. Many Romans despised him for supposedly accepting the situation, as if he had a choice. Sporus's life illustrates what happened when imperial desire overrode every ethical, moral, or human boundary. He ceased to be a person. He became a symbol of a diseased will imposed by force. The figure of the concubine at any level of Roman society bore this weight, being used as an extension of another man's power. Few had a face, even fewer left behind records. Most passed through history without a name, without a voice, and without memory. They were absorbed by a system that normalized submission and trivialized abuse. In the end, the concubine represented much more than a sexual or emotional role. He was the reflection of a structure of domination that began within households and extended to the very heart of the empire. Now, I want to know your opinion. Had you ever heard of concubines before? What surprised you the most in the story that so few people talk about when it comes to Rome? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you enjoyed the story and want to see more epic content like this, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. In the video on your screen, we reveal what slave owners were not allowed to do with their slaves in ancient Rome.